Good evening, my little twilights. Welcome back to another late night podcast. Tonight we're going to read Perils of Annoying Older Brothers and Bento Boxes by Speedwagons _glorious _main. This is a very cute story. It's a one shot about simply just Shigaraki being older brother. It has a bit of all for dad for one. I don't know how many of you feel about that. I honestly like stories where everyone is kind of like a good guy in some way or another. This is a one shot, like I said, with almost 2,000 words, 1,995 words. Again, like always, I'll link the fic in the description so that you all can go down and leave your kudos. And let's get on with the story. Summary. In one universe, the USJ is attacked by an army of villains, leaving destruction in their wake. In this universe, the USJ is still invaded, but things go a bit differently. Before we go on completely with the story, I just want to let everyone know that my voice is a bit raspy, more raspy than usual, so I won't be able to do Aizawa's voice as usual. And still, hope you guys enjoy. Shouta stood back to let 13 do their thing, as he split his attention between watching his students and watching his surroundings. They were at the USJ. When they were doing their first rescue training exercise today, which was never a boring class when one had to watch over a couple of first years who hadn't even broken their costumes in yet. Shouta just hoped that he wouldn't have to fish any of his students out of the shipwreck zone today. However, hope of that quickly dwindled as he eyed off Tenya, who had worn his full suit of armor even after Shouta's not-so-subtle hint about costumes that could hinder rescue efforts he had given them earlier. Shouta sighed, cursed the Idas for their impractical costume choices. 13 was just finishing up their speech about quirk safety when a ripple went through the class. Shouta was immediately alert, looking around for the cause. He felt his heart stutter and his body freeze when he laid eyes on the dark purple mist forming in the plaza below. "Is this part of the training? Has it started?" Kirishima asked, and Shota's heart squeezed at how young and inexperienced these kids were. He knew, in that moment, that he would give life and limb to make sure they stayed safe. The mist continued to expand until two people stepped out. The first person was wearing a pair of black skinny jeans and a black hoodie with "I paused my game to be here" written on the front in blocky white text. Long light blue hair peeked out from the hood, the whole thing clashing horribly with his bulky red sneakers that seemed oddly familiar to Shouta. The other person was wearing men's formal wear, crisp white shirt and black slacks and tie, and a charcoal grey vest. The person seemed to be made of the same dark mist that the portal was made of. The only features Shouta could make out of these were their two glowing yellow eyes that were obviously flicking around and taking everything in. "Stay back," Shouta ordered his students, throwing out an arm for emphasis. These two villains were awfully confident, breaking into UA without backup. It made Shouta uneasy. Something wasn't right here. His eyes landed on the bag the misty man was carrying, and he felt his whole body go cold as he registered the possible bomb. He was about to pull out his phone to alert the other teachers of the break-in, but froze when the one in the hoodie spoke up. "Izu," the intruder called out in a raspy voice, dragging out the two syllables in a sing-song voice. His voice echoed off of the concrete floor of the plaza and the glass panes of the dome above them. Shouta racked his brain as he tried to figure out who he was addressing. Good God, what if they were after one of his students? "You forgot your lunch, so Dad sent me and Kurogiri to bring it to you. You can't train to be a hero on an empty stomach." Shouta could now see that the hooded hooded figure was in fact a teenager, and couldn't help but wonder why his voice sounded like that. Was he a chronic smoker? The lead singer of a screamo band the morning after a gig? All thoughts of the teen's unusual voice were brushed aside as he reached into the bag the other person was holding. Shouta tensed, backing up a few steps and forcing most of his class to do the same. The teenager grinned as he pulled out a bento box, wrapped in a pastel green handkerchief. He presented it to the crowd of students in his two gloved hands. Gloves that were designed to nullify a 5-point quirk, Shouta noted. Shouta chanced a glance back at his students. Some of them had terrified looks on their faces as they watched the two intruders with wide, unblinking eyes. Most of them looked pretty confused and a little wary, some of them even sending narrow-eyed looks at Shouta as if he had something to do with this. Then there were the outliers. Todoroki Shouta looked completely nonplussed, as if he didn't particularly care about the two intruders. Though Shouta knew from the footage of his battle trial yesterday that the second the two intruders did make a move, they would be encased in ice. Then there was Bakugo Katsuki, who just looked pissed. He kept glaring between the intruders and, weirdly enough, Midoriya Izuku. Shouta followed his gaze and sent a look towards the student he had already had pegged as a problem child from day one to see him burying his glowing red face in his hands. Shouta thought at first that he was crying, but then Midoriya let out a loud groan and dropped his hands. His face was dry, eyes narrowed in a scowl as he began stomping towards the stairs. The crowd of students parted to let him pass, but Shouta wasn't about to let him go. Shouta grabbed him by the shoulder as he was about to take the first step down, stopping in his tracks. Midoriya, who are they? Midoriya's face had only just faded to a baby pink, but at Shota's question it started flushing once again. That's my older brother, sir. Shouta frowned. And the other one? Midoriya squirmed. That's Kurogiri. He is like a mix between a babysitter and a butler? Oh, and he's also kind of like our personal Uber? Shouta heard a few exclamations from his other students at that, but promptly ignored them in favor of interrogating the problem child. Care to explain how and why your brother and butler broke into one of the most secure facilities in Japan? Midoriya grimaced. I think he's already explained why he's here, sir. But how did they get in? Shouta pressed. Midoriya frowned. What? Like it's hard? He asked, genuinely confused. In that moment, Shouta could actually feel a few more strands of his hair turn grey. Izu! The teenager in the hoodie called once again, and Shouta had to repress a wince at how dry his voice was. He sounded like he needed a glass of water and maybe a few throat lozenges. Coming! Midoriya called, and Shouta had no choice but to let him go. Shouta pulled his phone out and sent off a quick message to the teacher group chat, all without taking his eyes off of Midoriya as he made his way towards the duo. Kurogiri had also pulled out his phone and was snapping pictures of Midoriya in his hero costume. Your hero costume looks wonderful, young Master Izuku. He droned in a deep, monotone voice. Master will be pleased to see these photos. Kurogiri? Midoriya winced, covering his face once again. The hooded teenager cackled as he shoved the bento box in his brother's arms. Mom and Dad are probably going to interrogate you about your costume over dinner, you know. Midoriya crossed his arms and glared up at his brother. Shut up! I swear to God, Tomuni, do not make me embarrass you in front of my whole class. Tomu, Shouta doubted that was his full name, grinned. I think I've already beat you to that. Midoriya smirked. You want a bet? The hooded teenager's eyes widened.
What are you?
Midoriya turned back to where Shouta was standing, with a very confused 13 and group of students, wearing a shit-eating grin.
Eraserhead?
My brother is such a big fan, he yelped as his brother lunged for him, dancing out of the way easily.
You're his favorite hero.
Shut up! His older brother hissed.
I don't want to have to murder you in front of your classmates.
Midoriya continued, unbothered by the threat of violence. He thinks you're so cool, and he'd love an autograph.
You're dead to me,
Tomu cried out.
So I've got nothing to lose,
Midoriya called back. He did a graceful backflip off of the edge of the fountain in order to dodge a gloved hand reaching for his hood, and Shouta raised a single impressed eyebrow.
He has an unlicensed Eraserhead body pillow he sleeps with every night.
Tomu stopped dead in his tracks, his head snapping up to lock eyes with Shouta. On his part, Shouta felt like his soul had just left his body. If he were a computer, he would be blue screening. Someone had used their precious free time to create an Eraserhead body pillow. It just didn't make sense to him. The teen was blushing furiously. He turned to Midoriya.
I'm deleting your Minecraft world when I get back home.
Midoriya froze, just like his brother had moments ago, slowly turning his head to face his brother. You wouldn't. Tomu grinned.
Oh, I would.
Even if I get you Eraserhead's autograph? There was silence. Then, in a quiet voice, he spoke.
Maybe.
Midoriya grinned before racing up the stairs in Shouta's direction. The problem child pulled a notebook and pen out of seemingly nowhere and presented them to Shouta. Can you please sign this? Shouta was conflicted. On one hand, he hated publicity and all of the bullshit that came with it. On the other, if it meant keeping them here long enough to detain them. With a heavy sigh, he took the notebook. Who should I make it out to?
Midoriya Tomura.
The hooded teenager stuttered out, face beet red. Eraserhead struggled to keep his calm and unbothered facade up as he signed the notebook. Then he doodled a small picture of his goggles underneath, purely to allow the other teachers more time to show up, and not because he was a tiny bit flattered at being called someone's favorite hero. He was just handing the notebook back to the younger Midoriya when the doors of the USJ slammed open. All Might stood in the doorway, his smile growing strained as he took in the scene. The younger Midoriya's eyes widened and he let out a quiet, "Oh no," which made Shouta stiffen.
All Might?
Shouta looked over to the older Midoriya to see his face had drained of all color. "Kurogiri!" Younger Midoriya called out as he threw the notebook down the stairs. It disappeared into a portal before reappearing beside the Mist Man. The older Midoriya, however, wasn't even paying attention to the notebook. He was staring at All Might, his face contorted in rage. He reached up and began to scratch at his neck.
You're the piece of shit that told my little brother he couldn't be a hero. Fuck you!
He yelled. He pulled his hand away from his neck just long enough to flip the number one hero off with both hands before he continued scratching. Goodbye, everyone. It was lovely meeting you all. Kurogiri called as he created a portal and stepped in, grabbing the older Midoriya by the shoulder and pulling him along with him. But not before the older Midoriya was able to get one last yell at "Eat shit and die!" out. The portal closed behind the two, leaving the plaza as empty as it had been when they first arrived. Save for a pastel green wrapped bento box sitting innocently on the lip of the fountain. Shouta pinched the bridge of his nose. He didn't have enough caffeine in his system to unpack all of that right now, so he just focused on the most important thing. So all it takes to get you to class on time is a possible villain threat, All Might. Good to know. All Might was gaping like a fish as he looked between the empty plaza and Midoriya, who was staring at his feet. It wasn't even lunchtime yet, but already Shouta was begging for this day to end. Alright, my little twilights, that's going to be all for this one. Sorry for the long wait. I know I was trying to keep a schedule of every Saturday at least. Since this week I've been gone for a while. We first had to go to the coast for a while, which is 3 hours away from my computer, so I couldn't take anything with me. We also had to pack very lightly because we all went with one car and there was like 6 people. So it was extremely chaotic just getting there, and obviously because I had to pack light, I couldn't pack any of my equipment. And this week I had to go over to my friend's house to help her with a few kittens, which actually was unplanned. I was only going to go there for a few days, but then it ended up being a week. So I hope you all enjoyed this chapter. The next podfic is going to be Ripples on Deep Water, chapter 2. Hope I'll see you all there very soon. Good night, my little twilights.